Hi, I'm John Guandolo, President and founder of Understanding the Threat. Now, recently in Texas, there has been an uproar because members of the GOP are moving to remove the vice chair of Tarrant County, Texas, which is in the Fort Worth area. The media is saying the only reason they want to remove this gentleman is because of his religion. What's not being asked are professional questions, and what's not happening is an adult conversation about real concerns citizens in Texas have about the growing threat to their community based on facts and evidence, not rhetoric. So understanding the threat is here to ask some tough questions, because none of the articles from the Texas Tribune, the Dallas Morning News, the Fort Worth Star-Telegram are actually putting out questions or showing any kind of curiosity as to why the citizens are upset, nor are they looking at the foundation from which the concerned citizens are coming to understand their real concerns. So, over these next several videos, Understanding the Threat is going to ask those tough but needed questions. So here we go. So let's ask a few more questions, basic questions. What Islamic law have leaders of the GOP read? The leaders of the GOP that are pushing back against Tarrant County GOP leaders who would like to remove a Muslim from being vice chair of the GOP in Tarrant County, Texas. Are they aware that Sharia is, in Islam, Allah's divine law? Are they aware that all Sharia requires Muslims to wage war against non-Muslims until the entire world is under Sharia? As a matter of fact, that's what the purpose of Islam is, to remove all areas of the world where Sharia is not the law of the land. And the vehicle to do that is called jihad. This is why this is taught to Muslim children and adults all over the world, but specifically in Texas. Let me give you a little example. Here is a picture of Goodfellow Air Force Base in San Angelo, Texas. This is the Taylor Chapel on Goodfellow Air Force Base in San Angelo, Texas, which just happens to be the base where Air Force personnel are taught to be intelligence officers. So not a coincidence that they created a Muslim prayer room inside the Taylor Chapel on Goodfellow Air Force Base in San Angelo. And these are pictures of the materials that are in the Muslim prayer room on Goodfellow Air Force Base. And what do these materials teach? So I'm holding in my hands a book that is found at Goodfellow Air Force Base in the Muslim prayer room inside the Taylor Chapel. You see the picture there on your screen, and here it is right in my hands. Well, if we look right in the beginning, it says the Quran is the source of guidance. The life of the prophet who bore it, Muhammad, is our example of how to put it into practice. The example of the Prophet Muhammad, including everything about how he lived his life, is referred to as the Sunnah. The Sunnah, the example of Muhammad, which comes from his hadith, the reports about what he did or said, and the Sirah, his biographies. So, Muhammad is, according to the Quran, and this book, used to teach Muslims on a U.S. military base. And by the way, the most widely used textbook for 12-year-old junior high schools in U.S. Islamic schools, says the Quran and the Sunnah is the perfect example for all Muslims. And then in this book, it says the Quran and the Sunnah is the Sharia, Islamic law. So let's look at that, because that raises some very interesting questions. Here it is, the 3 duties of a Muslim. And one of them is jihad. The word jihad is most often associated with the act of physically confronting evil and wrongdoing. And then it says, a mujahid is someone who engages in jihad. If anyone dies in jihad, they are promised paradise. A shaheed or martyr is described this way by Allah. Don't think that those who were killed in Allah's cause are dead. No, they are alive, finding their bounty in the presence of the Lord. Well, isn't that interesting? So they're teaching 12-year-olds exactly what ISIS and Al-Qaeda say are one of the 3 duties of Islam, and that if you die in jihad, you become a shaheed, someone who is a martyr for Islam. Interesting. So let's keep going here, and we see chapter 17 is titled Fiqh, jurisprudence, and Sharia. Sharia, or Islamic law, says right here, the operating principle of Islam is pretty simple. Everything is allowed unless it is forbidden by the standards of the Quran and the Sunnah. When you live your life the Islamic way, you are following the Sharia as guided by the Quran and the Sunnah. In more practical terms, the Sharia includes all the limits of Islam, what is allowed and what is forbidden. The Sharia is the ideal path for us to follow. So Muhammad is the perfect example. The problem is that the Prophet Muhammad tortured people. The Prophet Muhammad participated in beheading up to 900 Jews after the Battle of the Trench. The Prophet condoned the killing of people that mocked him. The Prophet himself, in the most authoritative hadith, Bukhari, said, I have been commanded to fight the unbelievers till they testify there's no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger. And then he went out, the perfect example, and fought the non-Muslims. Muhammad himself married a 6-year-old Aisha and consummated the relationship when she was 9. So that is Sunnah. And they're teaching children in America, in Texas, Muslim schools, and on military bases, mosques, and Islamic centers, the same thing. It also says here on page 372, the duty of Muslim citizens is to be loyal to the Islamic State. So the question I have is, why are we teaching the same doctrine that ISIS and Al-Qaeda teach to Muslim children in Texas? And if people in Tarrant County raise a question that a person who identifies himself as a practicing Muslim believes this, why aren't we having an adult conversation about this, especially when the man's name is Shaheed, one who dies in jihad? And by the way, why aren't members of the Dallas-Fort Worth area media even asking the gentleman in question, Mr. Shaheed Shafi, why did your parents name you Shaheed? Just a thought.